This meeting is being recorded.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Shipmate Self, the Clubhouse. This is episode number 8 already. We're just charging down the road. Tonight, we're going to try something a little bit different. We got 2 guests on our show tonight, and we're going to continue our conversation around being a father and fatherhood. And I'm excited that I've got a couple of guys that I really respect and are just stand-up guys. Sevi Carbajal and Jeff Ross, guys that have played for me, and we stayed in contact over the years, and guys that have families and are willing to talk a little bit about all of that. So I'm gonna really just dive right in, guys, and ask a really more challenging question. Really would love to hear, what has been some of the biggest challenges of being a father. And maybe introduce your family a little bit, and what have been some things that you're really good at and some things you've really struggled with.
Go ahead, Jeff.
All right, I'll go first.
Yeah.
So just my family. My wife, her name's Julia. She and I have been married for, I guess, right about 9 years. We got married in 2014. So we had my daughter in 2016. Her name's Aspen. She just turned 7, and my son Jameson will be 5 in 2 weeks. So 7 and 5. They're great ages. Definitely think that some of the younger years, and Sevi and I actually exchanged a lot of texts about this. Some of the younger years are a little more challenging in their own ways, and now these days I think the challenges have shifted a little bit. But that's my family. 4 of us, we're done. So we have 2, and we joke all the time, but I'm good with playing man defense and avoiding zone defense. So Sevi, I don't know if you want to talk through your family, and then we'll go through questions.
Yeah. So my wife Brooke, and got married in 2014 also. So going on 9 years at the end of this year. We have a 4-year-old daughter, Kara, and then a 2-year-old Walker, son, and might be in the same boat, Jeff, as far as calling it good. But we'll see. You never know. But yeah, we're in the thick of son acting like a 2-year-old and being a true 2-year-old, and it's just a little different, like you said, what we exchanged and kind of what the challenges are right now. But yeah, that's my family.
Your question, Jocko, the biggest challenges as a father. I think there's a lot, but I think when you have younger kids, I think having younger kids, it's navigating the emotions. You have to remember that they're little and they haven't, they're figuring that out, and they don't know yet. And when they're little, it's about, I think the biggest thing for me, because I think by nature I'm at a raw form. I have a bit of I can get hot. I can have a temper from time to time. And I think keeping a level head and remembering that they don't understand. And I think that's probably the biggest thing when they're little. It continues to be a thing now, but now that they're sort of reasonable and you can reason with them when they get a little bit older, and they can understand the consequences if they do or don't do something, it kind of shifts towards more of a little bit more of a dynamic way about it. So I think that's the biggest. I think that's the biggest thing when they're little is the emotional side of it, and the fact that when you talk with your wife, and you're navigating challenges with your spouse, it's like, all right, you can have adult conversations. You have to put yourself on their level, and then remember there's all kinds of things at play. Have they gotten a nap? Have they gotten enough to eat? Is it just a tantrum? Are they in their, we used to call it a tunnel, when they're in their tunnel sometimes and they're melting down, you just have to wait for them to get out of the tunnel. So I think, really, and Sevi's there now, and that's what he and I were texting about, but 4 and under is really a big dose of that. And I think that as the kids get to about 5 years old, all of a sudden it definitely changes. I don't know, Sevi, I don't know if you want to comment on that, and anything specific challenges that you have.
Yeah, no, I I agree. Especially for me specifically, because, you know, I grew up with 3 brothers. So like girls, I mean, that shocked me. I was, you know, even girlfriends, all that stuff. Girls are just foreign to me. Right. So there's that part. And then, you know, I love it. My daughter's like the greatest gift ever, but again, the emotions part, it's just different, right? Like she feels way more than I feel like I ever could. And so the emotional levels are just different. You know, she's a little bit older now. So like you said, she, it was like shocking to me the first time I heard her say, "Daddy, I'm just really sad." And I was like, for me to even say that to other people, right, as a grown man, that's like hard to do, right? It's like I can't tell many people that. And so when she told it to me, it's almost like I froze, like, oh, okay, like she's reasoning that she's having these emotions. So I agree when they're because my son, again, he's maybe starting to understand a little bit at 2, but there's just like they don't know, right? And so when our first reaction is like, just stop it. Just stop being like that. Stop doing what you're doing. That's kind of the first reaction. And then you kind of have to take a step back, and there's all these factors you have to factor in, which again, it helps you to slow down. Reaction is kind of the first thing, again, for me too, Jeff. And that's, you know, what we talked about is reaction of stop doing that because I said so, or stop doing that because I don't want you to be doing that. When, you know, they don't know. And it's not an excuse for them, but it challenges you as a parent to go beyond just that emotion and reaction and being like, okay, let's work into that instead of just stopping it. And then it's like, okay, we're all good. It's like, no, this is going to happen again. So let's figure out why it's happening and maybe what we can do in the future.
Yeah. I think the other thing, and Sevi and I also talked about this, that I think both of us probably to a different degree deal with is being engaged. I think, you know, my job, I have a very, you know, cumbersome, busy job, a lot of hours, and you come home, and I think that everybody to some degree can relate to this, but you come home and you're zonked sometimes, you know, you're wiped out. Some days less, some days more, but the thing is I have a window of time, you know, it's like 5:30, 6 o'clock till whenever they go to bed, 8:30, 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, whatever it is. So, you know, these are critical years, even though it's exhausting, but it is so important that you have to like set aside how you're feeling and be like, all right, I need to focus in here and put some extra effort in, because these kids remember. And it's you have to, you know, if you want to be an engaged father and pour into them, you can't just come home and you know drop on the couch and turn the TV on. You know, it's important that you come home and you engage. And some days you got to work harder, some days it's easy, depending on what's going on. Is it can you do stuff outside because it's warm, and is it light? Is it sometimes for me in the winter when it's dark and you can't go outside and take them, it's a little tougher just because you got to figure it out inside. And sometimes it's about sitting on the ground and playing on the floor, which is not the easiest thing for a grown man to do sometimes. It's that stuff. It's the being engaged when your instincts at times, you know, again, I feel like my mind always wants to, but your body and how you feel some days it's very challenging, and you got to dig deep and just remember that, you know, some days it's natural, the other days you still have to figure out how to be engaged, at least if you want to, you know, again, if you want to stand out to your kids as being an engaged father.
Yeah. And I guess from a therapist perspective, I just want to thank you, Jeff. That was great. Sometimes I just want to tell my clients, just stop doing that. But I can't. It doesn't work well. They wouldn't come back. But besides that, the part that I really resonated with is like often fathers, when I'm working with them, talk about this idea that they really don't have a gap between work and home. And that's really challenging. I sometimes recommend that a dad goes for a little bit of a drive, does some deep breathing, kind of recenters from work self to home self, because I think that's right. Sometimes you're just on and then on, and that can be really especially if you're somebody like me. I also struggle with being hot-headed at times, that you don't want to bring that into the room, right? If you've had a really challenging day at work or something like that. So I think those are really important things, and I'm glad you guys are bringing that up.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think you guys even kind of touched on in the first few episodes of, the first of all as men, but then, sounds like all similar backgrounds too, but like the, whatever you want to call it, self-care or whatever, maybe not, but just being in tune with what's going on with you. Because again, work, it's easy for most men to get lost in it and to take it very seriously. Work's a good thing, but I do the same thing, try to take it into, with my kids and with my wife, and that just, it doesn't mix well.
Yeah, and one person I'm working with right now, I mean, really struggles with that transition. And so I even say like, hey, really communicate with your wife. And if you need to, take a time out. Like, you're no good if you're bringing that in. So just go for a walk for a while. Just really communicate that. And usually that works out really well, because she doesn't want you there either when you're not in a good spot. And so I think that can really be helpful, is to communicate around that.
Yep, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. So you can feel that temperature pretty quick when you walk in. It could be her or me, but the key is, if she needs it too, you got to let her go. And
That's right. That's right. Both ways.
It's you can feel it, but you have to really understand yourself and understand her, and then and do that, because sometimes you just want to, you want to fix it or whatever. But I think the breather is the best medicine sometimes.
Definitely. And I'd be interested to see what you have to say, Scott. But one of the things that Jeff brought up, Jeff had a lot of really good things when we were texting back and forth. I really appreciated the conversation we had. But it was interesting because he brought up in their house, they want their kids to be emotionally comfortable, right? So when they are processing things at school, they have tough days, relationships, whatever it is, they come home, and similar back to the emotional thing, but to just let them kind of unleash, do what they need to. And then he also said, that within reason, obviously it's not a free for all, they like to say yes as much as possible. And so that their no carries a lot of weight. And so again, just relating to my past and the way I grew up, I was super blessed with the way I grew up, but no was pretty regular, right? And so after you hear no so many times, it's kind of just like, all right, whatever. I need to stop. I want to stop hearing no. Like, so I know it's going to be no, so I'm just going to do it anyways, or whatever it might be. And so again, it kind of comes into play as your kids get older. But as someone with young kids, I haven't been able to experience it quite yet. But someone with grown kids, older kids, just kind of that thought of having your no mean a lot. So kids know, like, hey, if he says no, that's a hard line. We're not going past that. So I don't know. It was just interesting that Jeff brought that up, because I was like, yeah, maybe the tendency is we need to be hard no, and then our yeses are sparing. But if you can say yes as much as possible, then your no means a lot more.
Yeah, I think Scott, I think Sevi was saying he wanted Scott to weigh in, but I'll comment after Scott.
No, go ahead, Jeff.
No, I think, from experience, now that my daughter, she's graduating, not graduating, she's done with first grade next week, so she'll be in second grade. My son's going into kindergarten, and from experience, they're starting to learn about the world. They're going out in the world, and they're figuring out, you got to learn to deal with people, difficult people, people that you like, all the things that, that we go through every day, but they're starting to figure that out. So when they come home, me and my wife, we talk about this all the time, but we want it to be a place where they feel fully secure, and that's their safe zone, and that's their home base. And, sometimes that, they come home and they've been holding something in and they don't even realize it all day. And then they're a little extra emotional. We want to let them do that. Again, as long as it's not being, disrespectful or, my son hitting my daughter or anything like that. As long as it's not that, you kind of have to allow them to feel like this is they're safe here, and they can be them here, and we care about what they say, and we try to really understand and the whole yes thing, again, this is something Julia and I talk about all the time, but we want to say yes as much as possible, because I don't feel like if I say no, we try to the best that we can. We try to explain why, as to like, we're saying no, and this is the reason why. I don't want to get my household into a routine that, well, I just because I said so, because I feel like for bigger picture for them long term, it's better to understand why something's not a good idea and something is a good idea. And we don't want it to be a household that has the culture of no. We want it to be, for the most part, enjoyable and fun. And of course, there's going to be times where they can't do certain things because it's a safety concern. They don't realize that they're tired and they can't do that right now. They don't, that stuff always happens. But, again, we always try to take a point to explain it to them as to why. It's, you can't do that 100% of the time, but we try to, that's kind of our policy, and we're navigating that because our kids are still little. I know that'll look different as they get older, but for the time being now, again, like Sevi, I was mentioning that you get to 5 and older, all of a sudden you can sort of reason with them and they understand.
Sure.
That's where you can navigate that, versus when they're little, it's a little more difficult to, well, this is why. Well, if you're 3, it may not matter to explain. It just depends on what season you're at.
Sure.
So I might change this topic just a little bit. I'm kind of curious, like, as you guys reflect about your family systems that you grew up in, what things did you take from your fathers that you really appreciated, and what things are you doing differently? I'm kind of curious what you guys have seen that way.
It's a good question.
Sevi, you go first.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm super grateful for the home I grew up in. I think for us and for me, I mean, I grew up in a Christian home, and I'd say that's probably the number one thing I'm passing on to my kids from my dad. And then I'd also say my dad was he's a coach, right? So he's usually really good. He would kind of walk through it with us and be like, this is why this is happening. This is why you're getting disciplined, or this is why, that happened. And so I think trying to pass that on for sure. As far as like just being able to reflect, that's a valuable tool for anybody to be able to reflect on decisions you make, things that happen to you, certain things like that. I don't know. I would say trying to maybe not pass on is similar. Just quick anger, maybe quick temper. And again, it's just, you have a lot more appreciation for your parents when you have kids, right? And you realize just how difficult it is, and they were doing their best. But having 4 boys. Yeah, I think again, just the not reacting immediately is maybe something that I'm trying to work on. Not obviously haven't perfected that, but I'd say those are the first things that stick out in my mind.
Yeah, that's great, Sevi. You could have stopped at 4 boys. Says it all.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah. I think for me, like, I had a great dad. My dad was an awesome dad. I mean, there's 2 things really. Kind of the angle that I was thinking about this was what either he didn't happen there, or what he didn't have experience with. And one of those is he didn't have a daughter. He had 3 boys. So his approach is towards boys, which is different. And you have to, as a parent, you have to remember that every kid you have to parent a little different, just depending on their personality. Like, my daughter is a major people pleaser. She doesn't want to let you down. Son is a lot more hard nosed, and you got to approach that a little different. But I think for him, he didn't have a daughter, so for me, it's okay. I got to figure out how to be a dad to a daughter.
Mm.
I think to a daughter, my approach with my daughter, and she's already a lover, but is trying to show as much love as I can possibly show her. I think that's the biggest thing. And, and my dad was very loving to us, but I think towards a girl, just the being very in tune and there for her emotionally is critical. So I think that's one thing. I mean, the other thing was, my parents, were divorced when I was young. So I think that, one of my takeaways that didn't happen with my parents was, I think that, prioritizing my marriage and my wife is so important to my kids. So, my dad with my stepmom, they did a great job with that. But, I think that for the best of my kids, seeing us have a really healthy marriage, treating each other right and talking to each other right and all those things, I think is critical. So I think those are probably the two biggest takeaways from how I was raised with my dad.
And Scott, I might put you on the spot here. I was kind of curious if you would answer this question as well.
You guys have said some great things, and I can see why Jocko is so impressed. He spoke so highly about you two so many times on just what kind of character you both have. And I can see that as you speak about these things. And I'm looking off to my right here, not to avoid eye contact, wrote a bunch of notes with just the things you guys have said. Just good stuff, man. Just young guys. Let me ask real quick, Jeff, how old are you?
34.
34. And Sevi, about the same?
33. Yeah.
33.
Gosh, time is flying.
Yeah. Jocko's 65.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Man, your guys' stories are, I mean, everybody's got a story, and it just matters to how you go about this, man. How you navigate these waters as a father, how you were as a son, how your relationship as a son to your dad, how it played out. I'm just amazed. And then, how that looks, and then how many guys, I mean, I don't know how you would define this. So how many guys had a good, that's, you can see what I mean by define. But let's just use the generic words. How many guys had a good relationship or a solid relationship with their father? How many guys had would you say average, where it was, it was okay. And, you know what I mean? There was some good stuff, some not so good stuff. And then how many guys had a terrible, and I don't like these words, but let's just use them, simplicity, a bad relationship with their dad. And in this group of guys, there's I think 150 to 175, I forget the number, of former players. I always found it interesting. I'd like to find out, I mean, what are the percentages of guys? And then how does that relate to how they're doing in this journey with their kids? Because, for me, I didn't have it modeled. And so, and it's not an excuse. So what it did for me, though, was I wanted to do well with this fatherhood thing. But where I struggled was I didn't have the tools and the know-how to go about this, man. And that's why we're doing what we're doing today, guys. That's why you guys are on here. We're trying to create a platform where guys can go in and say, hey, man, let's open up the conversation. And so I can start doing better at this, because this would have been huge for me, and I didn't have it. I didn't get it. I'm not knocking the people I was around. I don't know how it works, but I know when I became a coach that I had a lot to figure out, because I had a bunch of players that needed some things from me, and I didn't have them to give them. And these were the things I wanted to give them. My heart was there. I'm thankful for that, because I'm not saying that because I'm a great guy. It's just that my heart went there, that I need to do this, that this baseball thing is not that big a deal, man. And the big deal is this fatherhood thing. And so there I'm supposed to do this, and I don't know how to do it, man. And so that was an amazing thing. And that's just kind of what came up, Jocko. I'm not sure I'm answering that question for you, but that's kind of what was resonating with me as you guys were talking about this, was that kind of stuff. Man, like your story matters, and what you do with this is such a big role, because it's been said, it doesn't matter if you're a great teacher, a great coach, a great business person, that's awesome, man. I really believe this. If you blow this as a father, you blew everything in my mind. And I'm not kidding you. To me, that is the most important role that you can play. You got a 4-year, Sevy and Brooke have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. Julie and Jeff have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. And that is the most important thing you're going to do in your lifetime, is to help these kids grow and learn. And you talked about a safe place. Well, I'll end on this, Jocko, and I know we're sneaking up on the time too, but Jeff had mentioned a safe place. To create a safe place, you have to be safe yourself. And a lot of guys aren't safe themselves, so they can't create a safe marriage to create a safe place. And I thought that is neat, because that's the same and a little bit reverse of shipmate, and self. That's why we named it that. You've got to look at it that way and say, hey, I need to, the shipmate self goes the other way. The ship is the most important. You could say that's the family. The shipmate is your wife, and then yourself, and the kids kind of fall in that whole mix there of the shipmate. But ironically, to be safe, you better reverse it and look, and you better become safe yourself. Deal with your shit, man. And then that will help create a safe marriage. And then all of a sudden you have a safe home for some children to grow up in. And man, what a game changer. So it's been awesome, you guys.
Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Really well said.
I know we're a little bit close on time, Scott. Thank you for that. That was awesome. Yeah, and I think to guys out there that maybe didn't have, maybe in that medium, so maybe I didn't get a lot of what I needed I didn't get anything I needed. I think that's where the role of, a coach, a counselor like me, we often have what we call attachment wounds. So if we didn't attach well in our family systems, we might have to do some work to get where Scott's talking about, where you're safe with yourself, so that you can create that safety within your marriage and with your children. And you might be a guy that's divorced, right? And you still need to do that work so that you can create a safe place for your children, right? And I think being brave enough to take the time to, and I tell people this all the time, like, we always want the big house, the big car, the big career, but the most important journey to go on is the journey within, to heal a lot of these things, because when we don't do that, we pass this stuff on through generations, right? And I think that's one of the reasons I love Scott, is that he's really been brave enough to look at himself and to do a lot of that work. And that sucks. It's not fun to do. I've had to do a fair amount myself. It's a lot of work. It's exhausting. But when you heal yourself, that is it's like a drop in the water, right? It kind of reverberates out. So my last question this evening for you guys, and we're going to shut her down, is if you guys had some advice for these other guys on our podcast, maybe they're newly married and have children, maybe they have older children, what would you guys say as maybe some closing comments about what you would recommend? And Scott, if you want to jump in, you're welcome to as well.
Well, I'd say, honestly, having, and again, towards the end of our text conversation with Jeff, having community, and just knowing, like, a lot of times my wife and I, we just think we're kind of on an island. Like, there's no way other parents have to deal with this stuff. Like, there's no way other parents' kids act like that. And so when you're able to connect with other people who are in a similar stage or just beyond, it helps remind you of like, oh yeah, this is a pretty common journey, right? Like your kids are unique, but the trials that come up are pretty common. So having other people to go to, and kind of doing it in stages, somebody at your same stage, a little bit beyond, and then, having someone like Scott, somebody who's kind of towards the end of it, right? It's good to get input from all of those because it just gives good insight. So I would say that's helped us out a lot, is having community and other parents that you could go to talk through stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree with Sevi. I have a couple of friends that live near me, or in some cases not near me, but just the ability to either ask questions for advice. You always have your parents, and your parents, Sevi, I know you have great parents to give you advice and are there for you, but somebody that's in the battle that you're in right now is always good to A, give advice, but also B, help you realize that you're not crazy in some cases. That's huge. That's been huge for me. So I mean, I think that's a big one. Also, too, and Scott, you went over this, but I think a huge part of for fathers is you have to make sure to take care of yourself. You have to, because if you're spread too thin, I mean, you're out of fuel. You have to be able to refuel yourself, and it comes from so many different ways. It's spiritually, it's physically, it's mentally. I think being plugged into your faith and making sure that you're obviously you pray, you go to church, all those things, making sure that you're engaged with your faith. I think that's obviously important. I think that physically for me, and everybody's different, but I have to work out. I have to go to the gym. If I don't do that, it wears on me mentally, and it makes my job, I mean, frankly, it makes my job feel harder because I'm not, alleviating a lot of those stresses. And to me, exercise is so important. And then coming up, you have to, from a mental health standpoint, I think taking care of your mental health is huge. It helps you be a better father, a better husband. There's many things. I mean, getting breaks at times, like it's okay to on the weekend get a break for a few hours to go play golf, or go, connect with some friends, or go, fill in the blank with something that helps you feel like you have balance in your life. You have to have balance in your life. And if you overly focus on like, oh, I have to be there with my family or working all the time, you lose balance, and you have to take care of your physical health, your mental health. All that will shape you up to be a better father. So I think that taking care of yourself, you have to do that in order to be the best version of yourself for your wife and for your kids.
Awesome.
You waiting on me, Jocko?
Yeah, any closing comments, Skip?
How about you close, buddy? And I'll just throw a few things in there, and then you wrap us up, man.
Okay.
Like I said, I want to say this one last time. Very impressed with these two young lads. And I guess the thing I would say, as a 55-year-old man that has a 21-year-old and a 18-year-old that just finished up high school, don't compare yourself to others. Make sure you and your wife are on the same page with raising your kids, and then stick together on that. Talk through things, but don't compare yourselves to your friends, positive or negative. Find a thing that works for you, and things that you believe in together. It's huge. And then be real. Like we laughed about it. Be who you is, man. You know what I mean? Not somebody else. I see so many people, they try to do different things and try to be somebody else and try to, and my wife and I, we made a lot of mistakes. Probably me more so, but my wife, in marrying the right girl, so some of these guys aren't even married, marrying the right girl sets this whole thing off. If you two guys didn't marry the right gal, we're having totally different conversations here, man. And I married the right gal, and lucky, I mean, I tried to screw that thing up multiple times. But I'll tell you this, that she used to bring the boys to practice. And so I didn't lose out on anything. You know what I mean? Like they wanted to come see dad. So when she got done doing her stuff, she brought them to the field and they were around me all the time. And so engagement and time, you might not be the best dad and have the best ideas and, you know, all that stuff and putting pressure on yourself. But if you are there and you make time and you fight for that, I mean, you do that at least. I laugh, and I'll close with this. My son's fondest memories, because I asked them, like, can we talk about it? I asked him, man. I told him how hard it was, and you know, things I did that I would do different. And we've had some good chats, some laughs, some tears. But the things they remember were the silliest imagination games we made up, dumbass games in the backyard that I made up, that I was just like deep down in me is like, this is killing me, man. I can't wait till these guys are 18. And you know what? I'm glad I didn't get my wish, because I blinked and they were 18. But jumping on the trampoline, I'd come home and they would tackle me on the trampoline and not let me off it. And I'm not kidding you, I was burnt out. I just wanted, man, a beer inside the house sounded good. And I'm not a big drinker, but that sounded good. And now I'm out of bouncing on the trampoline when I'm done, but I'm out there. And I don't say that because I'm a great guy. I say that I am so thankful that I just kept being me and doing the silly things and the made up things. And ironically, talk to my boys, they'll tell you those are their best memories. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you guys for being on the show tonight. And good sage advice, Sevi. Sounds like community has been just an important thing. Jeff, self-care, really, really important. Scott, thanks for the, you know, just being yourself, like know who you is, right? And not using that comparison, which often takes us away from who we really are. So thanks, guys, for this episode. And if you liked our episode, as always, like our episode. And if you have a friend and you want to share the episode, please have them subscribe. We want to keep growing our community so other folks can benefit from our podcast. But everybody have a great week, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.